Hello and welcome to the SamMobile Podcast. I'm your host Ben from SamMobile, and welcome to episode 8 of your weekly SamMobile Podcast, where we give you all the latest news in the world of Samsung that comes fresh off the press, all brought to you from SamMobile.com. And we're not going to waste much time. We do have a guest with us for this week's podcast, which is great and always makes it much more enjoyable. And straight to the point, we are going to be talking about the Galaxy Z4. Oh no, Z4. The Galaxy Z Flip 4 leaks that have pretty much come out right now with the early renders and what that means, and with the information that we know on what the phone is going to be bringing and what our expectations are with it. And as we always do, when we do get a guest that comes in, we put them in the hot seat question and ask them what the expectations are for the rest of 2022 into the next year from Samsung. So as I always like to say, get your meal, get your popcorn, get your drink, sit back, relax. It's going to be a good show. So we do have a guest with us, and, you know, he's someone that, you know, I hold highly dearly in the team. He's actually our first SamMobile team member to come onto the podcast, which I'm really happy about. And because he is Mr. All Things Flip on the foldable side of things, he had to be the one to come onto the show. So I'm not going to waste much time. I'm going to give him the opportunity to introduce himself, and I'll pass it over to the man himself right now.
Hi, hello, Ben. It's great to be on the podcast. I've been saying you've been doing a great job with it. So it's definitely an honor to be, the first team member to be on the podcast. So a little bit of an introduction for those who may not be aware of who I am. My name is Adnan. I am the senior executive editor on the team at SamMobile. So I do a lot of the editorial work that goes on the site, and obviously being a part of team Z Flip, I do cover a lot of stories that come up regarding the foldable device. So yeah, I'm excited for the discussion today. I think we're going to have some great points to make. So let's dive right into it.
Oh man, look, the honor's all mine, the pleasure's all mine. It had to be you. You were the one that pretty much picked up and had all the articles, and as we always say, all the reference for all the articles that we would reference to will be in the show notes and the description. So definitely check it out. As always, subscribe to us, follow us on all your favorite podcasting and video platforms that you see and hear this. Give us a shout, give us a rating. And, we really appreciate the support on the SamMobile Podcast so far. No, the honor's all mine, Adnan. Honestly, man, I've missed you. I've missed you as well. And I'm glad that you're on here where we can just break it up, chop bread and have a bit of fun on this podcast where we can talk things to do with foldables. But you know what? Before we go ahead, how have you been? How have you been in general? How's things going on?
Well, aside from melting all day in this incredible heat where I live, it's been pretty much the same as usual. So, waking up, grinding, and then grinding some more, and then trying not to melt in the heat. But yeah, it's been good. Exciting things are in the pipeline. I mean, we are doing some great things at SamMobile. We have some plans for the future as well. So, our pipeline is pretty full with all of that. And obviously, there's always a general excitement for whatever's to come up with regards to Samsung and the new devices. So, we're quite excited for what we might see this August. And I think, Samsung may still have more surprises for us.
Oh man, honestly, it's an interesting one. It is a very, very interesting place to be when it comes to all things related to Samsung. Even when things are a bit calm, like this month have been in terms of what we like to call slow news weeks a month, it's still full on. And we're gonna dive straight into it. I'm glad to hear that you're good. Miss you lots. Glad that you're on here. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And you are part of Team Flip. I'm more Team Fold, but we'll save that to the end. Talk to me about what's happened. Out of nowhere, we've seen the leaks and the renders of the initial renders, by the way, of the Flip 4 design. And you picked up on it, and I saw it as well. And, me and you are both accustomed with the Flip series in terms of obviously having used the Flip 3 for a little while myself. You're a proud owner for Flip 3. We've done lots of coverage on the website as well as on SamMobile TV on YouTube. with flip coverage, even going as far as covering the bespoke edition when that was announced. We covered that as well. So a lot's happened, and there's a lot to be expected and come. I'll pretty much ask you straight away in terms of the breakdown and what you think. How do you feel about the Flip 4 renders that we've seen so far? What does that mean to you?
Well, my initial assessment, or the word that popped up in my head when I saw these images, these renders for the first time, was just disappointment. It was plain disappointment. And, it hurts me to admit that, being as much of a fan of the Z Flip series that I am, because when you see the Z Flip 3 compared to the original Flip, it was a revelation. It was like, somebody had reinvented the wheel, or it was something that was completely out of your imagination that could be done. Like, okay, the original Fold was sort of nostalgic in the sense that it was drawing on a lot of the nostalgia that we have with old flip phones, but it had yet to be modernized or brought into the current century, or to be basically hyped up to an extent that people would actually want to buy the phone. So when the Z Flip 3 came, and it was such a big improvement in terms of design, in terms of how it looked, how it felt in the hand, how it was put together. So you had this incredible device that was perfect in almost all respects, I mean, in my opinion. So I was equally, if not more, excited to see where we might go with the Z Flip 4. And it was a little bit of a disappointment to see that we might not be going anywhere from here, because it looks basically the same. And I know I've said a lot of crap about Apple and iPhones being basically the same for the past, I don't know how many years. So, having effectively a taste of my own medicine when it comes to a device that I love so much. So yeah, it was disappointing, but I can understand that there might be some business concerns for Samsung behind it. They can't give everything out in a single year. They do have to leave something for the next year, where I think we might be seeing a more substantial difference in the design and everything else. But I think for now, fans like myself would probably be not too excited as far as the design is concerned.
Yeah. You know what? I think you summed up. I'm going to reference the article because you posted this on the 11th. So this was, we're recording this today on the 19th on May, on a Thursday. This was on Wednesday. So it's just to give me more of a reference to look at, whatnot. And, you talked about the first renders that came out, the clamshell design of it, not really being that much different. The phone's edges do look a little bit more flatter. That's what you said, compared to the Flip 3 based on our renders. Again, take it with a grain of salt. As we always like to say, these are, renders. So it's not the actual physical device, right? So just for our disclaimers, we just want to take this with a grain of salt. Things could always change, big or small, down the pipelines, right? But we're just referencing off what we're getting right now. So the edges look a bit flatter if you're referencing it to your Flip 3. The design language is still pretty much the same. It probably looks like it's following what the S22, S22 Plus, falls in line with, like what you're saying. And again, I love what you said. Assuming these renders are accurate, the Z Flip 4 will look, slightly more modern than the 2021, but, it's not going to represent a big upgrade, like what you said, compared to the OG Flip, right?
Yeah.
Progress-wise, it looks like things might have slowed down. Obviously, you're looking at, maintaining the two main cameras with the main wide and the ultra wide. A similar size cover display like what we saw before. And like what you said, perhaps maybe Samsung are playing it safe, right? Looking at, how the Flip 3's come so far, where it's become a very, very successful foldable, right? In terms of just recognition, cost as well. The size of it, the appeal, the bespoke edition. And again, if we look at the yearly timeline, we should be expecting it somewhere within the first week of August, second week of August, like what we got last year. So I think just referencing what you're looking at, I get how you feel. I do get how you feel. In that sense, I'll ask you this question. what would have made you not disappointed? What would have made you at least happy, content, or actually blown away? What did you want to see come the 4th generation Flip as an avid Flip 3 owner and user, as your main device? What would you expect to have seen?
Yeah, so I mean, I should preface this by saying that obviously as fans, we always expect the best. So our expectation is to always be wowed beyond our imaginations every single year. But I do understand that there are business considerations for Samsung. It wants to see how far, I think, in my view, it wants to see how far it could effectively milk the success that it got from the Z Flip 3. So I think we've seen a few reports that said up to 70% of all foldables that were sold in the last year were the Z Flip 3.
Yeah.
And the Z Fold 3 was also a popular and a successful device, but it was the Flip that really captured the mass market attention. And the attractive price point, in my view, had a lot to do with that as well. So going forward with the Z Flip 4, I think it is evolutionary, because I feel that Samsung might think it can further extract more value out of this platform or this design, that it can further increase its profitability and margins before it goes for another major overhaul of the concept. But as regards to what I would have liked to see, I mean, I would have wanted a bigger cover display, because even though this one is much better than what we got on the original Flip, but there's always room for improvement. I mean, we would want it to be more usable. We would want it to be more capable of assisting us and not having us unfold the device so many times. And furthermore, I would have liked to see more like meaningful design changes, as opposed to just some, I can think of a term, I don't know if that's relevant, but it's basically like putting lipstick on a pig. That's what I feel. That's what has been done here. So
I love that.
I would have wanted it to be more meaningful than that. So instead of just shaving, I do understand that making the sides flatter would make the grip more secure, because that's one of the concerns that we've had. If you ask most of the Flip 3 users, they'll say that it feels that the device is going to slip out of your hands, and the curved sides do add to that element of risk when you're using it, because I'm still using my phone without a case since I got it last year. And every time it makes me feel that I'm living on the edge, so that does add a little bit of excitement to my life. But I would hope that the flatter sides help to prevent some of that, to mitigate some of that. And obviously it would have been nice to get a slightly larger display, even though it's quite good at the point it is right now. But you always want more. That's the thing. It's part of human nature. So yeah, I think those are the core things that I would have wanted. And obviously, I know we're just touching on the design aspects right now. There's a lot that you could ask for with regards to the specifications. But as far as the design is concerned, I would have wanted it to be more revolutionary in the sense.
I've got to get you on more. These analogies that you're dropping, I think the audience are gonna. It's gonna get me more funny. Lipstick on a pig. People. This is why I call him President Adnan. We gotta get him more. If you can comment on, just get Adnan on more. That will make my day, people. This is what we need. This is the kind of detailed but fun analogies that I just want the SamMobile podcast to really bring. And you're showing out at the minute as the first team member on. I love that analogy. And you know what? Like you said, there's so much to discuss beyond just the design, and which is good. This is what discussions like this are for. There's a bit more room and range to kind of delve in and dive in, give your thoughts and opinions. And we're going to get to the specifications part of what we know that's been leaked, and what that means in terms of expectations and what it should be, what we should have in there for specs and whatnot. For design, I have to agree with the takes that you've put on. And I have to say it's the same. Here's where I think what I would have wanted to see to be kind of excited about. I'm still team Fold, right? I'm still team Fold for my own reasons, as we've discussed in the past offline, and we'll probably add a bit of that in here, but we might actually have to save it for a separate episode. Especially, I know come August, we're going to have a lot more of this once these products are official and in-house, right? What I would have loved to see is if you look at the renders based on what we're seeing right now, right? I would have wanted the outer, when you close it, the top half of the outer shell, that top half is where I know it's going to be a weird and very challenging engineering thing, but I would have loved to seen that upper half of it be the cover display and then the color of it to be at the bottom. I still think this flip deserves a triple camera system. I know it's asking a lot. I know a lot of people miss it. I'm good with the wide and the ultra wide. But I still think having a 3x zoom, I'm just at the point where come a certain price point, right? A 3x zoom should just be part of it. Like what you're seeing on the S22 and S22 Plus, right? I just feel like I still think the flip deserves a triple camera system one way or another. That's just my opinion. I don't see no one else commenting about it. And it's just something I want to throw out there for kind of like a curveball in the mix of what most people don't comment on. Go on. Add to that.
Yeah, so I think we also have to sort of understand how Samsung works and what their ideology is when they make these devices, because for the longest time it has been, in my view, engineering at Samsung that drives design as opposed to Apple, where you had design that was driving engineering. I mean, there are countless posts and stories that you can read online with Apple's notorious design team effectively pushing engineers to come up with solutions that fit their concept of the design. But with Samsung, it has been the other way around, and I feel that it's engineering that has the upper hand when it comes to these discussions. So, I mean, I think it is theoretically possible for them to make the top half, the entire cover display, to throw a triple camera system on there. But I think at some point engineering steps in and says that, that's overkill at this point in time. So True. maybe they step back from it a little bit.
Yeah.
And also another thing I want to add is basically the Z Flip 4, much like the Z Flip 3, is going to exist in a world of its own creation. Because
I love that.
There is nothing else on the market right now that's going to put a challenge. Like Huawei did come up with its own clamshell, but we know, given the troubles the company has, it's never going to come out of China. Therefore, it's not going to bother Samsung that much. And they did do some wacky stuff with it. They had the circular cover display on it and wacky cameras on it as well. But it's an insignificant problem for Samsung, if at all. So why should Samsung go all out right now when it basically does not need to?
I love, bro. Do you know what? This is where sometimes it's easy to forget these things, right? And you said it, especially when you're talking about global reach and global availability. It is such a hidden feature and it's such a hidden benefit with Samsung across all their device range, right? Samsung's global reach for their product launches is still unmatched. No other manufacturer can match them on a scale. And we forget this because we get so used to the fact that every region you go to, you just expect a Samsung device to be there.
Yeah.
But you can't say that for other manufacturers, especially not on the range of products that Samsung make. We're talking A series, M series, S series, RIP Note series, foldable series with the Z and a Flip, tablets. Samsung's range and availability within each product SKU is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
True.
If you pick Google, for example, for how good their A series seems, with the Pixel 4a, 5a. If you look at last year, the Pixel 5a, for example, was only available in USA and Japan.
Yeah.
That's if you compare it to the A52 and A52s of last year, You could get that anywhere you could in the world, even with all the supply constraints that was happening. You see, so I love that breakdown of it is living in its own world, in its own existence, based on that. So then, when you're in that unique situation, you're thinking, hang on a minute, we can save a lot of money when it comes to design R&D and manufacturing R&D, because I don't think people realize how much money goes into research and development, from trial and error, different materials that you're using. And then you have to think about the repairability of the product once you make it. There's so much that goes into the cost of R&D before the product becomes final, that I think Samsung just felt that we don't need to do that right now. Maybe when we get to the midpoint of the decade, as in 2025, then we can pretty much think about going all out then. But I think for now, we can go for, like what you said, a very, very refined evolutionary development of the success of the Flip 3 and work it from there, and then recoup obviously the benefits that will come back from that once that goes through well. And I'll be very honest, I'm sitting there, I didn't even think about that until you actually broke it down the way you broke it down. You know, and it's a secret cheat code. It's a secret cheat code. What then? This then moves on to the next part, right? We'll come back to the design again. The stuff that we know in terms of specs, and we know the specs is one thing that is it doesn't dictate the ultimate experience, but at a certain price point, it becomes a point of discussion. One of the things that was discussed about was the battery increase and capacity. We had some documentations that came out in terms of the parts and whatnot. And apparently we're getting around a 100 milliamp hour increase. So we're going from something that is meant to be around 3,300 from what we have with the Flip 3 to about 3,400, 3,500 or thereabouts. What's your take on that? What's your take on the battery capacity situation?
Well, it's promising, because you always want to get an increase in the battery life. And yes, battery life is a concern on the Z Flip 3. If you push it too hard throughout the day, it's going to die on you at the end of the day. That's one thing, you know. When I moved from the Galaxy Note to the Z Flip, that was one of the biggest things. The challenges for me was getting used to the fact that my phone could not, you know, go 2 days on a single charge. So, but you have to also keep in mind that this 100 milliampere increase is less than, it's not even 10% of what the existing capacity is. So I think I'm personally not getting my hopes high too much. I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. I do understand that perhaps more efficiency could be derived from the new processor that's going to go in there, perhaps the new memory chips that are going to go in there, and other software optimizations that Samsung could do, which, you know, Samsung has been a bit lacking in with regards to optimization. So I don't feel that it is going to make a world of a difference. Yes, it might give us 30 minutes or an hour more, but battery life, like so many things that dictate the software, the smartphone experience, is subjective, because it ultimately boils down to how you are using the phone. I mean, I have some days when I rarely use my phone for 30 minutes or an hour. And then I still have like 60-70% battery left on the next day. But, you know, if it was a substantial increase, like if we were going up to 4,000, 4,500, then I would have been very excited. But as it stands, I don't really, you know, give it much thought.
You answered before I even asked that what would be the sweet spot capacity to really make that difference, and you just answered it. I think when we get to that point where we can pack somewhere between a 4,000 to 4,200 milliamp hour battery into that form factor, you know, I think that's when it's really going to make a difference. And it's not even just the Flip 3. I've got the base model S22, and this is something that I commented on, and I mentioned that drop in capacity below 4,000 milliamps compared to the previous model S21, you've seen the difference of how it suffered, where I'm averaging about 2.5 hours of screen on time to 3.5 hours of screen on time. in more cases than I like to admit, this S22 drops below 3 hours of screen on time. You see,
Yeah,
so
that's pretty bad.
it's concerning. It's concerning. So I'm on your side where this apparent 100 to 200 milliamp hour battery increase, in the grand scheme of things, how much difference is it really gonna make? Especially if you're using 5G. Like for someone like me that lives in a very 5G heavy coverage area, even indoors, I get good 5G signal. I don't think it's gonna make much of a difference. But you see, you talked about optimizations. You talked about the system on a chip. And that's another thing that I just saw on Twitter today that apparently was leaked. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. Now,
Plus.
Yeah, 8 Gen 1 Plus. Oh, goodness. It's even the 8 Gen 1 Plus. Oh, Lord. Oh, no. That is a point
Talk
of
about
contention.
putting lipstick on a pig.
See, bro, it's true though, right? No, bro, it's I'm worried about that. I'm gonna be very honest with you. I'll get your take in a minute. I'm worried about that. I don't think it needs to have that chipset. I really don't think it needs to have that chipset. Unpopular opinion, I think a chipset like, the 870 equivalent would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, it then puts a question on the mark of, should a latest flagship not be using the best of the best of the best chipset? You see, I don't think it should have a chipset like that. I think that chipset is doing too much for the battery capacity and what that device is. But I mean, what's your take when you saw that?
Well, I think it has more to do with marketability than being sensible. As you mentioned, it would not look good if the latest flagship and one of the phones that Samsung is basically betting its entire future on does not have the latest chipset, because it is going to get dragged over the coals if it does not come with a flagship chipset. And with regards to marketability, if a new version is coming out, and that's one of the reasons I think the 100 milliamp hour increase in the battery life is also being done, is just because of marketability, because Samsung marketing is going to come out with some very funky line to basically justify this increase into something that feels a lot more substantial on paper. Like this battery life is going to be 10 hours or 12 hours, so they can put a big headline in one of the promotional materials and say, oh, now this phone gives you 12 hours of battery life. Similarly with the processor, I think it's just something that they have to do. It would not behoove the Z Flip 4 to ship with a chipset that is not the latest and the greatest, because ultimately in the second half of the year you are going up against the iPhone, because there are very few Android flagships that come out in that part of the year. I do understand that new Pixels are due in August or September, but then again, who gives a crap about Pixels? They're not global in their approach, and they're not really any competition for Samsung. So it all just boils down to the fact that it needs to be done just for the sake of being done, and that is the approach that Samsung takes to it. Otherwise, they could opt for a less power intensive chipset that delivers a good experience, enables them to save battery life, and also helps Samsung improve the margin on the product as well. But it just wouldn't look and sound as good.
You know what? Just to wrap it all up, I think you're right. It's one of those catch-22 situations, right? Samsung are doomed if they don't put the absolute best into their products, especially when it's that of a flagship territory device. Even when it's a foldable, right? It's like you get caught in between. If they put what is actually needed in a chipset, and I've seen some people say, like myself, that, hey, something like a Snapdragon 870 will be fine. A more balanced out chip for that type of device will be fine. But then at the same time, if you don't, and it's like, oh, you're holding back, Samsung are holding back, and they're charging us more for previous generation chipsets that don't make sense for their flagship foldable device, which the Flip still is. And then at the same time, when you're going as far as potentially putting something like an 8 Gen 1 Plus, not just an 8 Gen 1, an 8 Gen 1 Plus into that, a smaller battery, and then the experience is deteriorated when it comes to longevity, you don't win anyway. So I do agree when it comes to, marketability, making it more exciting and more bleeding edge and top of the tree. they got to play the game. They got to play the game. But we could talk about this topic. There's going to be many things to discuss when the products become official.
Yeah.
These are all leaks and rumors. We'll take it with a grain of salt as we go and as time comes. But that's pretty much the first and the main brunt of the topic for this episode. Pretty much done. Honestly, I've enjoyed the analogies that you've dropped when it comes to, just the thoughts and opinions on the Flip 4. And at this point, we're pretty much not that far. August is not that far. Before we know it, it's going to be here. And I think that's when me and you are going to really delve in and have like another follow-up conversation when we both have the devices and we can really figure out the nuances and different stuff. Talk about, are they going to do anything? We'd even touch on what are they going to do in terms of the crease? Are they going to decrease, the crease, pun intended? There's so much to discuss, people. So sit tight. The months that are coming in from July onwards, especially August onwards, is going to be very exciting for foldables and flagships. But we're going to go for a small little break, small interlude. Don't go too far. Don't miss us too much as we try not to miss you guys too much. And we are pretty much going to put Adnan in the hot seat and ask him the special guest question that we've kind of traditionally coined for the SamMobile podcast, where we pretty much asked Adnan what is the rest of his expectations from Samsung for the rest of 2022 and what might dip into 2023. Have a small discussion and pretty much close off this episode. So don't go too far. We'll be right back. And we are back. I hope you didn't go too far. We tried not to go too far. We got to give ourselves a little break and just get into the final leg. And as you know, once we have a special guest on the episode, we got to put them in a hot seat question. And Adnan is no exception. I know we've talked about one of the biggest expectations to expect foldables from August. It's one of the expectations. But as a guest on the show, we always like to put you in a seat, rebuttal, and just have that discussion about, is there anything else that your expectations fly into what you want from Samsung for the rest of 2022 and what could potentially spill into 2023? So we thought, let me ask you that and you can give us our thoughts. What's your expectations from Samsung for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so obviously the foldables are a big part of that, but beyond that, I think we're looking forward to the new watches because there were rumors that there's going to be a Pro model this time around. It's going to be a bit bigger. That's what's rumored. We're going to get a bigger battery in that also, and then there's also have been rumors that the rotating bezel is going to go. So that's going to be a significant and substantial change to basically the very concept of a Galaxy Watch. And it would be interesting to see how that's received because a lot of people are already quite grumpy about that possibility. I particularly have not really been a big fan. I know that sounds sacrilegious, but I've not been a big fan of the rotating bezel because I understand that
Really?
it's a good concept and it's been taken from, because I've long been a pure watch guy, so it felt like it was just stolen from the diverse watches of old. But I understand that it works well for a smartwatch, and Samsung's execution of the idea was very well. But I'm fine with I tend to use my Galaxy Watch quite frequently now. I didn't used to before, but I have a Galaxy Watch Active 2. It doesn't have a rotating bezel. It has that digital bezel thing. Doesn't really make any difference. So I think we'll be fine as far as the Galaxy Watch 5 is concerned. Going into next year, I think we're also looking forward to new earbuds because it's been a while since we got new earbuds. So that's going to be exciting because there's still a lot of improvement that could be done with new Galaxy Buds. We still haven't got another model of the Galaxy Buds live, and we still don't know whether we are going to get one because that shape, it was like a one-off thing and Samsung didn't really make another one. So I would hope that it does because the shape of the Galaxy Buds live appeal to a lot of people, and it would be nice to get another one, and obviously we have to see if we get another Galaxy Buds Pro model, as has been rumored a few times already. And then on to 2023, I think obviously the biggest expectation that we have is for the S23 series. And I think given that we've got a big revolutionary upgrade this time around with the Ultra effectively being the reincarnation of the Note and everything. Next year we might be a bit disappointed, as we might be with the Z Flip 4 this year. I think it's going to be a more of an evolutionary change. Because I think we did touch on this briefly in the first section as well, but I wanted to add to that. We understand and we have seen this cyclical nature of Samsung's products. You get 1 year that's completely amazing, and it's an aggressive change, it's a big change. The next year is basically a more subdued version of that same thing. So I think we can expect that cyclical nature to continue in 2023. The S23 might not break any new ground, but it would basically be a further refinement of the existing models. And then obviously the exciting stuff would be in the second half of next year, when we get, I think, our biggest upgrades to the Z Flip and Z Fold series. So it's exciting times. I would want to be amazed like we were this year with the freestyle that was announced out of nowhere at CES.
Oh yeah.
So that was really spicing things up a little bit. So I hope that because there are some obvious improvements that need to be made to the freestyle also. So it would be interesting to see if they come out with another version, and particularly they come out with a version that you could probably get in most places in the world, because as I understand, it's still not easy to get your hands on the freestyle in some markets. So that's going to be good. And obviously there's a lot that Samsung does in TVs and monitors and gaming monitors and stuff like that. So CES and in January next year would be exciting. And obviously you might be heading off to Vegas once again to bring us all from the ground once again. So that's going to be exciting. So I know we're going to have our plate full as well next year with all of the things that Samsung will be doing. So I think it's exciting times ahead. That's all I'm going to say.
Bro, you touched on wearables. You're the first guest to touch on wearables. The watch, the earbuds, and you've opened up a bit of a can of worms. The rotating bezel. You're not a fan of it. Oh my goodness. You're gonna make the audience turn up. I was not expecting, bro. I wasn't even thinking about wearables. And this is why I love this hot seat question, because you think you know all the devices, and then now you've touched on wearables, Do you know what I started thinking about? Are Samsung gonna make official Samsung branded headphones? Not earphones, headphones, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think that's a product category that's missing from them? Official, if you look at Apple, they've got the AirPods Max, official headphones, Apple branded, not Beats branded. I'm thinking that's something that Samsung haven't done, unless they've done it and I've missed it. But I think that's something that they haven't done. And like what you said, that category of new earbuds, the follow-up to the Pro, the follow-up to the Live, that's something I completely forgot about. So wow, that's actually true. We need to kind of look at the expectations on what they would do with that. And then when you touched on the watch, the fact that, what would a Pro level look like from the bigger battery and the feature sets, right? That's a very interesting one to consider as well. But then even going back and looking at it, I'll be very honest with you, bro. I preferred the Watch 4 compared to the Classic. I preferred the Watch. I mean, doing the hands-on coverage for SamMobile when I went, I actually preferred the Watch 4 instead of the Classic. And I'm deep in it. Damien was the previous guest last for the previous episode. Me and him went for that hands-on, and he said the same thing.
Yeah,
he actually said the same thing, that he actually prefers the Watch 4. It's so funny, we talked about it last week. He prefers the Watch 4 compared to the rotating bezel.
Yeah.
That's a very, you've thrown a curveball. I wasn't expecting that at all. It's kind of messed up my whole psyche in terms of expectations. So that's actually something I'm gonna actually really have to kind of open up my thoughts and my approach to it, if and when that comes with the Watch 5 and what a Pro version will look like and how the wearable landscape for Samsung needs to look like. But I genuinely think Samsung need to work on headphones, right? I don't know. Do you think the same? What's your thoughts on that?
I know you mentioned on-ear headphones. They have done it in the past. Samsung used to have a level series of audio devices. So they did have
Yeah, that's
level.
true. That's true.
I think
That's
it was
true.
called level on or something. So
Yeah,
there's a
level on. That's true.
big chunky on-ear headphones. And let's not also forget that Samsung owns Harman, that owns premier audio brands like AKG and Harman Kardon also. So it has, depth in the company, basically, under all of these
Yeah.
brands to produce these things. Whether or not it finds value in putting up a an on-ear a pair of on-ear headphones that are positioned to effectively take on the ones from Apple. I really
Mm,
don't think that it would go that way, because it would ultimately be compared to or be accused of copying something that Apple has done, and that is a tag that
mm,
Samsung has
mm,
worked really, really hard to shed off. And it's a good
mm,
thing that
mm, mm.
they've shed that off quite well. So I really don't think they would try to go in that, and there's not much value that they could get out of it, because let us not forget, the headphones from Apple are part of how it positions itself as effectively a music company, to an extent that
Yes,
obviously Apple
yes.
Music is a big part of its portfolio.
Yeah,
So it has
yeah,
to
yeah.
tie that, and obviously it has to promote that. So it there's some synergy within Apple's business for a product of that kind, but it
Mm,
does not exist for Samsung. So I that's one of the reasons
yeah,
I think maybe they've not really tried to come up with something like that.
yeah. Wow, wow, wow. That's a very interesting take. And it generally, the fact that you're the first person to really delve into like the expectations of how the wearables landscape
Yeah.
is going to be for Samsung and should be for Samsung for 2022, dipping into 2023. Oh, lah, that's woken me up. I've looked at the obvious stuff. When I say obvious, foldables, going to CES and getting to see all the display developments with QD OLED, and we're seeing, devices that are coming out with
Yeah.
QD OLED from monitors, from TVs, and even from TVs from Samsung Electronics himself with the S95B and the
Yeah.
55-inch and the 65-inch form factor. I've been so driven at that for good reason, but
Yeah.
actually, I've missed what the landscape for wearables need to be,
Yeah.
especially with obviously what Google have announced with the Pixel Watch, what Samsung need to do to counteract that and show their stance of it, the synergy with Wear OS, what potentially a pro level one will look like, the earbuds, obviously 2023, what that looks like in terms of the S23. Yeah, man, you've dropped some gems. You've dropped some gems. We definitely I definitely need you back here. I need you
Yeah.
back here because I feel it like, once I go on my little trip and come back, into the beginning of July, it's gonna get juicy. It's
Yeah.
gonna get juicy. And I think from August onwards, you've dropped gems. You've got me excited actually. You got me excited. You got me
That's good to hear.
excited. But
That's good to hear.
honestly, mate, that is pretty much it for this week's episode of Sam Mobile Podcast. Episode 8 is pretty much wrapped up. Any final takes from you, Adnan? Any final takes from you?
Yeah. So I think um, we tend to read too much into all of what comes out of the blogosphere, but I think it's important to temper your expectations.
Yes. Yeah,
We
that's
can't
true.
always get
That's true.
everything that we hope for, and one of the big reasons why we tend to get disappointed, or I always see very negative comments from people who had too high expectations before a product comes out,
Yeah.
and after that they're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
going to
true.
switch, and Samsung did that, or Samsung's going to die, or let a
Mm.
curse fall on Samsung's head." So I think that's all part of not managing your expectations. So as long as we do
Yeah.
that, and as long as we be realistic, and we understand that Samsung does not make devices as a public service, it's a business, it has business concerns first and foremost, then I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. You make good points on that, and it should be a friendly reminder. It should
Yeah,
be a friendly
true.
reminder for all of us. But we'll wrap up today's episode. We really hope you enjoyed it. Definitely, all the details and all the references will be in the show notes with all our socials. Definitely, as we always recommend, follow us across all the platforms that you get to watch and listen to this on YouTube and all your favorite podcasting platforms as well. As always, stick to us weekly. Give us a follow, give us a rating, turn on notifications so you will be first to listen to every new episode that we post on the Sam Mobile Podcast. And as we like to say, definitely stay safe during this time. Hope you're all well, and we will catch you in the next one. Peace out, people.
Peace out. Bye-bye.